Hey, this is another Elemental Shaman guide, made in poor quality, edited with a program that I have no idea how to use. Today I'll be going over your glyphs and your specs for a level 85 Elemental Shaman. This is on live patch 4.0.1, pretty sure, and come next patch it will become irrelevant. Alright, hello, this is an Elemental Shaman guide for Cataclysm raiding and leveling and instancing specs at level 85, which I've already said. I've been watching around TGN guides and other guides, and they're giving you false information. Okay, with the specs, there's 3 specs for an Elemental Shaman. This is our cookie cutter spec, which you should all be using, unless there are certain situations. It's mana conservative, it gives you AoE abilities, and gives you movement capabilities. Just generally it's good, it's a good spec. Now for glyphs are a major problem for LE Shamans, and what I've seen a lot of people do is run Glyph of Flame Tongue Weapon over Glyph of Flame Shock. This is not good. Glyph of Flame Shock, if used correctly and your rotation correctly, should be 3rd on your damage list, not a chain lining or anything else like that. My data consistently is Lightning Bolt as number 1 damage is about 56% of my damage, Lava Burst, and then Flame Shock Dot, and then Searing Totem, because I don't use any other spells. Now minor glyphs, I switch between the Healing Stream Totem glyph and the Chain Lightning glyph for AoE situations. It's better, the Chain Lightning glyph is better for AoE because it's hitting 2 more targets, and you should never ever use Chain Lightning on a single target. Lightning Bolt does way more damage nowadays. Minor glyphs, not important. I mean, I run the Thunder Glyph of Thunder and the Glyph of Thunderstorm, as they coincide really well together. Glyph of Lightning Shield, essential, 100% essential. You have to have this glyph. If your Lightning Shield falls off or falls below 3 stacks, you're wasting Lightning Shield stacks on getting it up above the 3%, so your Fulmination is being weaker. Now the reason why the Glyph of Flame Shock is so essential, sorry about the bad camera, let's move over here. The reason why Glyph of Flame Shock is so essential is because of this talent here, Fulmination. Fulmination has caused a lot of controversy in the Elemental Shaman forums and in the DPS rotations and everything like that. Fulmination. Okay, the way your Fulmination priority should go is between 6 to 8 stacks. If there is less than 5 seconds of Flame Shock Dot on your target, and you are between 6 to 8 stacks of Fulmination, you must cast Flame Shock. You should never ever be casting a Lightning Bolt while you have 9 stacks of Fulmination. It is a major DPS loss. For enchants, as far as it goes, you should always, I know it's expensive at the moment, it didn't cost me anything because of the guild, but Power Torrent on your weapon is amazing. Alright, my gear is not optimal at the moment. I've got 2-piece, which is good. Now, Engineering is great for entry level because it allows you to get an epic helmet, which is really good, only replaced by tier. As far as stat priorities go, it's the same as in Wrath: hit to cap, haste, spell power, crit. Well, haste and spell power being very, very close in comparison. Alright, so that's your general cookie cutter spec. The cookie cutter spec. Now rotation is, Searing Totem is still not as it was in Wrath. Searing Totem will only attack the target you're attacking that you're in combat with. So I've seen a lot of people do this as well. They use their Elemental Mastery for Lava Burst. This is not right. Basically, with the global cooldown, with how much haste you have, by casting Elemental Mastery and a Lava Burst, you would have got a Lava Burst off in the same amount of time. Now you see here I've got the Totem Timer add-on. It shows me I've got 7 stacks of Lightning Shield and my Flame Shock was running out, so I have to recast it. Now you see over here, Scar, I'm holding 17k DPS. Now this is on an 85 dummy and not a heroic one. So basically you want to keep your flame shock up, spam the hell out of lightning bolt. Now you see, that was an interesting point. I had 7 stacks of lightning shield and flame shock was running out. So I casted a lightning shield, a fulmination, because I needed to, in order to not cap my fulmination ticks out. Now searing totem has to always be down, and this is just your general rotation. You'll get better as time goes on. You've got to keep lava burst on cooldown, and you've got to work on coinciding your flame shock and your earth shock casts. That's essential. For the rest, it's all just filler talents. Okay, so as stated before, there are 3 elemental shaman specs for this expansion. This spec I'm showing you here is what has been dubbed the turret spec. This is the spec that you will use when there are fights that require 0 moving, 0 AoE, and maximum DPS. Now, from my experience, the only fight you will ever use this would be Shaman in Blackwing Descent. And in honesty, it doesn't give you any more DPS bonus, it just gives you more versatility and more survivability whilst not being able to move so well. Glyph choices are exactly the same for all 3 specs. Glyph choice is the same. Now this spec, I'd never use it. I wouldn't use it. It is only, you have less mana conservation, it's just not a very good spec. And this spec here I'm showing you here, this is our max single target DPS spec. As you see, we're not expecting to Earthquake, as Earthquake costs a lot of mana. At the moment it does shit all damage, and is generally not a very good spell. Now instead we've gone 1 and 2 in Convection and 0 in Earthquake in order to pick up Totemic Reach. Now this is good for long range fights where people might become out of range, say Atramedes in the air phase when everyone's running around like headless chickens, or I don't know, some other fights. But this spec, it's good, but again, I just feel a lot more comfortable running the cookie cutter spec, which I haven't got at the moment. So those are your 3 spec options. All 3, they're viable, but I would still run with the cookie cutter spec personally. That's just my choice. Alright, so in this section I'm going to talk about your race. Now, we're given 4 choices. Now I'm talking for Elemental Shaman DPS here. Enhancement Orc is the best, without a doubt. But for Elemental Shaman, we've got 4 choices. The Tauren, the Goblin, the Troll, and the Orc. Now I've done the math out here. It took me a while because I'm a dumbass, but Goblin gives you 1% spell haste, completely, constantly. Now that works out to 125 haste, passive, constant, all the time. No up or down spike or anything. Orc, the Blood Fury racial gives you 538 spell power off the top of my head, over 15 seconds, on a 2-minute cooldown. That equates out to 73 spell power, passive. Now the Troll, Berserking, gives you 20% attack and casting speed for 10 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. Now that equates out to 138 passive haste. Now in terms of passive sustainable DPS, I prefer the Goblin because we are 13 haste behind the Troll, and the Troll racial only lasts for 10 seconds and is on a 3-minute cooldown, so it's not all that good. But if you want burst, you go the Troll. If you want sustainable DPS, you go the Goblin. Now Goblin is also pretty cool because we get the rocket jump, which I'll show you here. And we can just go downstairs like that, or straight over the top of them, whatever you fancy. But I like that. It's good for raids, for Randuel Thaurissian, I think his name is, where you have to move quickly from the breath. That's a good thing. Personally, I like goblins. They're pretty cool. And besides, we get the Beyonce dance. Look at this. How pro is that? Now come on, you can't tell me that's not pro. Goblin male, don't go them. They have a gay ass dance. But DPS sustainability, Goblin, burst, Troll, and don't go an Orc rally. yeah, go Goblin. Goblins win. Right, in conclusion, Elemental Shamans these days, we're actually pulling ahead in DPS by a fair margin. I know in my raid settings might not be the best, but at the moment in current fights on current contents, I am one of the leading caster DPSs in my guild respectively. Now I don't know if that's the same with you guys or whatever, but I know from my experience, and come next patch where everyone's getting nerfed but the Elemental Shaman's getting a buff, a pretty major buff as well, with the 10% increased damage to Lava Burst passive, we're going to be pulling ahead in a long margin ahead of other casters if played correctly. So if you can execute your collaboration, I'll say, of your Flame Shock and your Earth Shock cooldowns, and you can do your spec right and keep your rotation up, just remember, always remember, unleashed elements only when moving and when Spirit Walker's Grace is on cooldown. I mean, for my opening, I'll just show you here. We'll just stop this DPS rotation and switch dummy. We'll switch over to here. I'll show you how I prefer to open on a fight. I'll put my that's already stuffed it up. Sorry. Alright. So we go Unleash Elements, Flame Shock, Lava Burst, Totems, cooldowns, and then go. That's how I like to start, and there's not a lot that can out DPS that. Now see, the Unleashed Elements proc, how it does 20% extra damage to your next fire spell, that actually increases your Flame Shock dot time. That your Flame Shock's dot damage by 20% for its next duration, which is 27 seconds. That's 20% more damage on your Flame Shock for 27 seconds. That's a lot more DPS than you would use it on a Lava Burst. So if you do have to use Unleash Elements when you're moving, use it on a Flame Shock. It's much better, much better. Thanks, this is Randuel, as I'm named now, on the server for Thaurissian, signing out and wishing you best wishes for your Elemental Shaman.